In the years after the Civil War, when Reconstruction reshaped the South between 1865 and 1877, a new kind of courage began to rise in places where freedom had once been outlawed. In Abbeville County, South Carolina, a region known as the birthplace of secession, a Black man stepped into a role that defied every expectation of the time. His name was William B. Gibson, and in the early 1870s, he became one of the first Black sheriffs in the state's history. Abbeville was a place where the wounds of slavery were still open. The county had been a stronghold of the Confederacy, and even after the war ended in 1865, many white residents refused to accept the idea of Black citizenship, let alone Black authority. But during Reconstruction, federal law and the Reconstruction Acts of 1867 opened the door for Black men to vote, hold office, and enforce the law. It was in this moment of fragile possibility that William B. Gibson stepped forward. For the newly freed families of Abbeville, Gibson's election was more than a political victory. It was a transformation. Here was a sheriff who understood their fears, their hopes, and the dangers they faced every day. He walked the same roads they walked. He knew the weight of the past they carried, and he used his authority to protect them in a county where violence had long been used to keep Black people silent. But wearing the badge in the 1870s came with a cost. Across South Carolina, white supremacist groups, including the Ku Klux Klan and the Red Shirts, launched coordinated attacks against Black officials. Between 1870 and 1876, dozens of Black leaders were threatened, beaten, or assassinated. Every morning, Gibson stepped out of his home. He knew he was stepping into a world that wanted him erased. Yet, he refused to back down. He enforced the law with fairness, even when white residents challenged his authority. He mediated disputes that could have erupted into bloodshed. He protected freedmen from exploitation at a time when many landowners tried to force Black families back into near slavery through unfair labor contracts. And he did it all while knowing that the federal protection sustaining Reconstruction could collapse at any moment. By 1876, South Carolina had become the center of the violent political struggle that ended Reconstruction. The Hamburg Massacre, the Ellington Riot, and the rise of paramilitary groups signaled the return of white control. When federal troops withdrew in 1877, the era of Black political power in the South was crushed. But William B. Gibson's legacy did not disappear. It lived on in the families he defended, in the children who grew up seeing a Black man in authority, and in the generations who inherited the courage he modeled. His service in the early 1870s stands as proof that even in the most hostile places, Black leadership took root. And for a brief, powerful moment, justice looked different in Abbeville County. William B. Gibson's story reminds us that history is shaped not only by the famous names we memorize, but by the protectors who held the line when the world tried to push them back into silence. His badge was more than metal. It was a promise that justice could belong to everyone. This is William B. Gibson, a sheriff, a protector, a Reconstruction lawman who refused to back down. This is Black Justice Untold, bringing light to the lawmen who stood for freedom when the world stood against them. And as always, we honor the past, we uplift the truth, and we reclaim the stories that were never meant to be forgotten. Like, comment, and subscribe to help keep our stories alive. This is Black Justice Untold, bringing light to the lawmen who stood for freedom when the world stood against them. And as always, we honor the past, we uplift the truth,